Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at something pretty spectacular from Custom Knife Factory and Rotten Design. This one is visiting for review. It was sent over by Skylar. His Instagram handle is Tiger Claw, I believe 1315. I'd recommend you go and give him a follow because he's got a bunch of cool stuff in addition to this. So definitely go and take a look. The knife we have here is one that I've been very, very excited about. And so I'm really, really thankful that Skylar was willing to send this along and let me check it out and of course share it with you guys. I have had this for a few days. I've been carrying it a little bit. I've used it a little bit, not enough for a full review, but definitely enough that I can talk about it with some experience. And I've got to say, I have absolutely enjoyed getting to have this knife and just check it out for a little while. So a big thank you to get things started off. As I'm talking here at the beginning, let me just kind of try and show you some of the details here so you can appreciate. I will say this, I am a fan of this design and the designer which is Rotten Design and Custom Knife Factory. I don't think I've ever handled a Custom Knife Factory knife that was not exceptionally well built. And so overall, this was a knife that I was pretty stinking excited about. All right, and hopefully you'll see some of that excitement as we work our way through all of the different features that we're going to look at. By the way, I will put Rotten Design's Instagram down below so you can go and check that out. I know, before some of you comment down below, I know there have been some discussions about him not delivering as quickly as people would like, and he has addressed some of those things publicly, so I'll let him speak to that rather than myself. For my purposes, I like the design, I like the manufacturer, so I'm going to look at it from that perspective rather than getting into all the internet drama that can be out there about not only this designer but all kinds of different people. Okay, so this is a fairly large knife. Let's get that out of the way first. 8.5 inches overall, 3 3/4 inches on the blade, 4 7/8 closed, so almost 5 inches, 1 3/4 inches in this dimension. So in pocket, this is a pretty large knife. You can see also that this milled clip is not super deep carry. So carrying this is something you definitely know you've got a knife with you. 7.73 ounces. Again, heavy enough that you know you've got a knife with you. And finally, we normally talk about the grip area here. This grip area, and this knife is really meant to be held like this. And in this configuration, you've got a lot of space. There's 4 1/4 inches here, 4 1/4. It's 3.5 just on the handle, but honestly, you can pretty much tell from the design, and as soon as you get a hold of this knife, that this is how it's meant to be gripped. So that 3.5 inches is not super relevant to our discussion. You guys know I often carry large knives. I'm used to carrying something bigger and a little heavier in my pocket, so to me those numbers are not a big deal, although I understand that some of you may be put off by that. Let's move on to the blade, and I've got to say, guys, the blade is probably my favorite part of this knife. I love this blade. I love the shape. I love the design. It's it's different. It's interesting. We've got a few different features going on here. We've got fairly thick blade stock at 3/16. Nice distal taper, very, very aggressive hollow grind, making it extremely thin behind the edge. Reverse Tanto blade shape here with a nice little swedge and a bit of a swale there. Really, really cool looking knife. I love how the blade is kind of out in front of your fingers when you're going to cut with something, and cut it will. I have done some cutting with this, and I've got to say, because of that hollow grind and that super thin edge, this slices so well. I absolutely love the performance on this blade. It also happens to be M390, which doesn't hurt things either. And so, yeah, I love this blade. I love the finish. I love the shape. I love the geometry. I love the grind. Everything about it, I absolutely enjoy. And so, yeah, huge win on that blade. Moving on now to action, lockup and deployment, however you want to call it. I've got to say, pretty enjoyable. I do have one little complaint, and it's going to be a real nitpick, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. Before we get to that, let me point out, this is a titanium frame lock. The lock bar is very accessible. The tension is really, really nice. You can spidey flick this like a dream. Really, really enjoyable. satisfying action, especially when you keep your fingers out of the way. Okay. Now, in addition to that Spidey flick, you can also open this and do a nice slow roll open. You can even use the blade stop, which is not meant to be a thumb stud, by the way. It's a blade stop, but it still works to deploy the knife. It's not super comfortable, but it can be done. The only real complaint I have about this is you can really hear and you can kind of feel the detent ball riding on the blade. So if this was my own knife, I would probably oil that detent path, and that would probably, alleviate that issue right away. But you can definitely notice it, and you may even be hearing it. I'm not sure. Try and do that a little bit. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but certainly I can definitely notice that. So otherwise, though, extremely smooth, extremely fast. You can see, try not to cut myself here, but very, very drop shutty blade. One you actually have to be a little bit careful with. Not as careful as the Thief 23. That was bound to cut your fingers. This one, not so much, but still very, very drop shut. Let's take a look at the lock side a little bit, since we are talking about lockup and deployment. Overall, guys, the way I would describe this action is it's exactly what you would expect to find on a really nice high-end folder. It's smooth, it's satisfying, it just feels like high quality. It's really, really, really nice. All right, and that may not be what you want on every, plain old EDC knife, but on something high-end like this, you want that smooth action. You want that really, really great feel, and it absolutely delivers that. All right, moving on to the handle. This is a titanium frame lock, zirconium backspacer, which is a really, really classy touch, although I could take it or leave it. I don't know. It does look nice, and it's really cool to kind of have that material, but I will say it affects the price point, and we'll talk about that a little at the end. As well, the Timascus clip, again, beautiful. And I've got this all fingerprinted up, and my camera and the lighting in here is just not doing it justice at all. I'll try to take a couple of pictures and put them on Instagram where you can appreciate it better, but it is gorgeous. Again, though, it is going to increase the price point. Take a look internally here. You can see that there is some milling to lighten that up a bit. Still a heavy knife, but it's nice to see that, and imagine what this would weigh if they hadn't done any of that internal milling. So, oh yeah, the one thing, couple quick things here. When we were talking about the action, I didn't talk about the hollow stop pin. To me, I don't know. I mean, you could have just put the stop pin in and covered it. I don't love to see that hole there. I guess it's kind of interesting that it's hollow. It doesn't add anything to the knife for me. Maybe some of you out there really, really appreciate it, but I would have preferred to just see this left clean. And now let's take a look at that really awesome finish they've done on this handle. So what we've got is sort of a heavy grinder finish with a blue anodization, and it gives so much depth. It's really, really impressive the way that they have finished this handle. And I have to say, second to the blade, this is my next favorite thing. This finish is fantastic and really makes the knife interesting and adds some, it's simple and yet adds a really, really cool detail that I can really, really appreciate. So the way the handle is built and finished is really, really nice. I do question the height. If this was my knife, now this is Skylar's knife, so he went ahead and upgraded that clip. The backspacer, they're all zirconium. Okay, so if this was, if I had any choices, I would have left this plain tie or even something else. I would have even possibly gone with a G10 on one side. But they were going for, very high end, and they wanted to get some of those really high end materials in there. What about the ergonomics? So ergos on this knife, and you guys remember a while back I asked questions about what you like and don't like, and a couple people commented they hate it when YouTubers or anyone uses that word ergos. So now I kind of like to use it just to bother a couple of people that are out there. Anyway, ergonomics, how does this feel in hand? It actually feels really good in the grip that it's kind of meant to be held in. This knife is asking for a choked up saber grip. As soon as you get it in hand, it just drops into that position. Now, in other positions, if you're going to do like a draw cut or like an ice pick grip or something, it's not that great, but that's kind of to be expected. When you specifically design a handle around a particular grip, it's going to feel good in that grip, and it may not feel as good in other grips, and that's the case here. So in the grip that it's kind of meant to have, it feels fantastic. And when you're actually doing some cutting with this, which I did do, I comment on how nicely this blade cut. I did do some cutting with it, and it's great as a knife to use. Now I know most people are probably not buying this to carry it and use it, but I know Skylar carries and uses his knives. And so from that perspective, if that's your purpose for this, it's going to work great. It really, really is nice in hand when you're doing stuff with it. All right. So finally, let's move on to some comparisons. I don't have a lot of stuff that's highly comparable to this, but we'll pull in a couple of things. So first of all, let's grab a Chris Reeve Knives Nkosi. Now, if you're someone who's wanting something high-end and durable and long-lasting, that's going to be like a great EDC knife, you know, this is perfect, and it's probably going to outshine this in certain ways. Okay, same with, let's grab the XM18 here. You know, if you were going to drop me in a bush and I was going to have to survive, I would certainly rather have the Hinderer than this. But in terms of a knife collection, okay, it's a different discussion. Now, I do want to grab a couple of other overseas knives. So here is one of my all-time favorite knives. This is the Riot Torrent. And in terms of fit and finish and action and overall feel in hand and quality, these are very, very similar. Now, that's a little bit off-putting to me, okay, because price point is way different between these two. And so that's something each of you watching is going to have to kind of work through. And that's one of the things that puts me off a little on this knife, is the price is way up there, as it has been with Custom Knife Factory for a while. Even compared to something like this, which is a much more expensive Riot, the price point is still a couple hundred, actually more than, no, I guess it's about a couple $100 more, even more than that with the clip added. All right, finally, let's grab one more overseas produced knife. All right, there is the WE 037. And again, we've got a similar level of quality, and so if you're looking for something very high-end, but you're not married to this particular design, then maybe those are some options for you. Now, in my conclusion, I've got to say a couple of things here that I think are pretty important. First of all, this, because of the price point of this, it's actually kind of outside of my area. All right, my upper limit is, you know, around $500. Every once in a while, I'll stretch that a little bit and go to $525 or $550 or something on a knife, but that's pretty rare, okay? And so since Custom Knife Factory has sort of changed their business model a little bit, and all of their knives have been, you know, close to $600 or more, that has put me, you know, that's kind of moved them out of my area, really. So I want to comment on that a little bit. Well, I'm complaining about that price point, and I do think, frankly, they could make money at $550. Right? I don't think it needs to be where it is. They are walking a very difficult line, all right? They're trying to work with designers who are concerned about their brand and about the marketplace, and so they've got to find a way to satisfy these makers, okay, that doing a collaboration with them is not going to tank the value of their customs, it's not going to flood the marketplace, and the way that they do that is to make these very limited runs and fairly expensive, okay? And you know, I don't know, you know, if there were 1,000 of these or 2,000 of these or 6,000 of these made, would that ruin John Sorensen's business? I really don't think so. Especially, you know, if these are coming in at $300, I think it's a different marketplace. The person who's buying a $300 overseas produced knife is not buying a handmade custom. They're just not, okay? But nonetheless, that's the approach that Custom Knife Factory has taken. And it's not a bad approach. It's just not one that I appreciate, because it means I really won't be buying any of their knives. All right. The other problem it puts me in as a reviewer is I can take a look at this, I can share it with you, but unless you're willing to go and chase one of these around on the secondary market, and there are some out there. By the way, if that's if that's what you want to do, you can find them, and I did do some hunting, and you did find some in closer to my price range. I think I found a couple for like $550, $575, having sold on Blade Forum. So if you are so inclined, you might be able to go out there and find some on the secondary market, kind of let it be known that you're looking. All right, so now that we've talked about that portion, who is this for? This is for someone who loves loves the design. Maybe they're a collector. Maybe they have a couple of full customs, but they don't want to carry them because they're sort of, you know, they're highly expensive. So they buy this that they can carry and use and enjoy the design without, you know, hurting the value on their full customs. Maybe you like the custom, but you just don't want to pay full price for it. So you can get something that is very, very close, okay, in terms of quality, certainly right there with any custom knife, but still comes in at a more affordable price point. All right, certainly that's a thing. The one thing that always kind of bothers me about Custom Knife Factory knives is they're priced like mid-techs, and they're not mid-techs, okay? A mid-tech, the maker's hand is on a mid-tech in some way, shape, or form, and in this case, it's not. They're limited production, but they're production. Very well done, exceptional level of quality, and no, there's no question about any of that, okay? We've already kind of talked about how these are outside of my wheelhouse at this point because of the price point on them. Maybe a used one could happen. So my overall thoughts on this knife. This is spectacular. Okay, it really is. Custom Knife Factory has done a phenomenal job on the build. There's nothing I can point to and say, man, they could have done this better, or I wish they would have done that. There's nothing I can point to and say, man, I wish they would have been consistent with the design or something like that. I mean, there's just nothing that you can really point to as a detraction. These are truly spectacular. And by the way, at the price point, they kind of have to be. All right, you know, I'm famous for saying even, you know, anything over 150 bucks basically has to be perfect in my book. And even then, you know, if I get a $75 knife that has some glaring issue, I'm pretty ticked off about it. Okay, but yeah, this is a beautiful design. It's well executed. The grind, the look, the finishes, everything is fantastic about this knife. And if this is a knife for you, and if you're not, you know, if you're the person who's happy to put out $650 or $700 for a production knife, then this is a perfect knife for you. And even for me, this is so tempting. This is a highly compelling knife, and I will say, beautiful piece, completely satisfying. And again, thanks Skylar for letting me check this out. I've absolutely enjoyed getting to experience this knife and getting to share it with you guys. By the way, if you're watching this, you won't be able to find one of these there, but go over to DLT Trading, use my affiliate link, and that does help the channel a whole lot. I'm not going to be buying knives like this, but even the stuff that I do buy, any even little bit of assistance makes a big difference. So thanks a lot for using that link. You guys have been really good to use that, and that does help the channel out a whole lot. So I'll ask you to keep doing that. Thanks again, Skylar. Thank all of you for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this knife. What do you think? Am I crazy for loving this knife as much as I do? Is it, you know, totally outside of what you like, or is this a knife that you feel about as excited as I do? Thanks for watching again. We'll talk to you soon.